The silence after. The words hung in the air like broken glass. You got fat. The cafe stilled. Talia Russo stood frozen, her ex's smirk carving itself into memory. But across the room, a man in a tailored suit watched, dark eyes unreadable, Italian ink crawling up his forearm. He didn't move. Didn't speak. He simply stared at her stomach with the kind of focus that made empires fall. Her ex had no idea the danger he'd just walked into. And Talia? She had no idea the man watching her had already decided she belonged to him. Please like, share and subscribe. The humiliation burned hotter than the cappuccino cooling in her trembling hands. Marcus, her ex-boyfriend of 3 years, stood over her table with that same condescending smile she'd once mistaken for charm. His new girlfriend, a willowy brunette with too much lip filler, clung to his arm like a trophy. Seriously, Talia, Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the small Italian cafe. What happened? You used to be so careful about yourself. Talia's fingers pressed against her abdomen beneath the table. 6 weeks. That's how long she'd known. That's how long she'd been hiding it. The nausea, the exhaustion, the slight swell she disguised with oversized sweaters. I'm fine, Marcus. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Fine. He laughed. You look like you've been stress eating since we broke up. I mean, I know you took it hard, but that's enough. The voice cut through the space like a blade through silk. Controlled. Italian accented. Talia looked up. So did Marcus. Don Vittorio Moretti stood 3 feet away, espresso cup in hand, his tailored black suit fitting him like a second skin. Dark hair swept back. Sharp jawline. And those eyes, God, those eyes, like smoke and violence contained behind perfect civility. The tattoo on his forearm was visible where his sleeve was rolled. Italian script winding around a crowned serpent. Leggy. Power. Bloodline. Marcus straightened, clearly trying to decide if he should be intimidated or offended. Excuse me, Marcus said. You're excused. Vittorio's gaze never left Talia. Leave. Who the hell do you? Yow. One word. That's all it took. Marcus grabbed his girlfriend's hand and left, muttering about psychos and old money assholes. The cafe returned to its low hum of conversation. Vittorio didn't sit. Didn't ask permission. He simply stood there, studying Talia with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're trembling, he said quietly. I'm fine. You said that already. It wasn't true then either. She met his eyes. Mistake. Because in them she saw recognition, not of her face but of something deeper. Something she'd been desperately trying to hide. His gaze dropped briefly to her stomach. Then back to her face. When? He asked softly. Her heart stopped. When what? When did you plan to tell me? 2 months earlier. Talia had met Vittorio Moretti at a gallery opening. She'd gone alone, fresh off her breakup with Marcus, wearing a black dress that made her feel powerful instead of broken. The art was pretentious. The wine was free. And the man standing in front of a violent Renaissance painting had looked at her like she was the only real thing in the room. You don't like it, he'd said without preamble. The painting. She'd stepped closer. It's technically perfect. But it's soulless. Yes. He'd smiled then. So devastating. Vittorio. Talia. They talked for hours. About art. About beauty and violence. About the things people hide behind polished surfaces. She hadn't known who he was. By the time she found out, when his driver opened the door to a car worth more than her apartment, when she noticed the way security cleared paths for him, it was too late. She was already falling. They'd spent 3 weeks in a haze of late-night conversations, stolen evenings, and a single night together that had rewired something fundamental in her chest. Then he disappeared. Business, his assistant had said. Urgent family matters. He'd be in touch. He wasn't. And 2 weeks after that, Talia had stared at a positive pregnancy test in a bathroom that suddenly felt too small for the weight of her future. Present day. I don't know what you're talking about, Talia said, gathering her things. Vittorio's hand closed gently around her wrist. Not restraining. Requesting. Don't lie to me, Bellezza. His thumb brushed over her pulse point. Not about this. You left. The words came out sharper than intended. No call. No text. Nothing. What was I supposed to do? Track you down and... Yes. She blinked. You should have found me, he continued, his voice low and rough. You should have burned down my door if necessary. Because if you think for 1 second that I would abandon... You already did. Silence crashed between them. Vittorio's jaw tightened. Something dangerous flickered across his expression. Not anger but something deeper. Regret mixed with possession. My brother was killed, he said quietly. Shot outside our family estate. I had 72 hours to consolidate power, eliminate threats, and prevent a war that would have put bodies in the street. His eyes held hers. I couldn't risk bringing you into that. Not until it was handled. Talia's breath caught. I didn't. No. I'm aware. His hand slid from her wrist to her palm, fingers threading through hers with devastating tenderness. But you know now. And you're going to tell me the truth. Her defenses crumbled. 10 weeks, she whispered. His exhale was shaky. Controlled. Shaky. Whine. Yes. Vittorio closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, something had shifted. The careful distance he'd maintained, the polite restraint, was gone. What replaced it was pure, undiluted obsession. Then you're coming with me, he said simply. I'm not. Not a request, Talia. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. You and my child are not staying in whatever poorly secured apartment you've been hiding in. End of discussion. You can't just... I can... And I am. He guided her toward the door with a hand at the small of her back. Protective, possessive. We'll discuss the details once you're safe. Safe from what? He looked down at her, and for the first time she saw the violence he kept leashed. From everyone who'd use you to hurt me. Vittorio's penthouse. That evening. The space was exactly what she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive everything, and the kind of minimalist luxury that screamed power. What she hadn't expected was the second bedroom already being converted. I had it started this afternoon, Vittorio said, watching her from the doorway. The crib arrives tomorrow. I've hired a private obstetrician who'll come here for appointments. Security has been tripled. Talia turned slowly. You did all this in 6 hours? I made calls from the car. That's insane. That's necessary. He stepped closer, and God, he moved like smoke, silent, inevitable. You think I'm overreacting. I think you're used to controlling everything. I am. No apology. No shame. And right now the two most important things in my world are you and that child. So yes, Talia. I will control every variable I can to keep you both safe. She should have been angry. Should have pushed back against his arrogance. Instead she felt something else entirely. But, claimed. I can't stay here forever, she said weakly. Why not? Because we barely know each other. Because this, she gestured between them, whatever this is, it's not real. It's just biology and circumstance and... bullshit. She froze. Vittorio closed the distance until he was right there, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst ways. You think I obsess over every woman I sleep with? His voice dropped. You think I disappear for business and spend every night staring at my phone, wanting to call you but knowing I'd put a target on your back if I did? Vittorio. You think this, his hand hovered over her stomach, not quite touching, is just circumstance? Her breath hitched. I wanted you the moment I saw you, he continued quietly. I wanted you when I had no right to. No. Now you're carrying my child, and there is no force on this earth that will separate us. Not your fear. Not my enemies. Not your misguided belief that you're better off alone. I'm scared, she whispered. Good. So am I. That confession, raw and honest, shattered her remaining defenses. What if you change your mind? The question tore out of her. What if this baby is born and you realize you don't want this life, or you meet someone else, or... Talia. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I am a man who keeps what's mine. And you, Bellezza, have been mine since the moment you walked into that gallery and looked at me like I was worth knowing. Beneath all this. He gestured at himself, at his expensive clothes and dangerous reputation. Bullshit. A tear slid down her cheek. He caught it with his thumb. Stay, he said softly. Let me protect you. Let me prove that this isn't temporary or convenient. Let me show you what forever looks like when a man like me decides he's found his reason to stop being a monster. She shouldn't believe him. He did anyway. Okay, she breathed. His kiss was gentle, reverent, the kind of kiss that promised safety and obsession in equal measure. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. Tomorrow we tell my family, he murmured. And say what? That you're under my protection. That anyone who threatens you answers to me. That they will respect you or I will burn every bridge I've spent my life building. Talia's heart hammered. That's dramatic. That's a promise. 3 days later, Moretti family estate. The dining room was a masterpiece of old-world wealth. Crystal chandeliers, ancestral portraits, and a table long enough to seat 20. Currently it seated 8. Vittorio's family. His mother, elegant, sharp-eyed, draped in pearls. His uncle, cold, calculating, clearly second in command. 3 cousins, various ages, all watching Talia like she was an interesting problem to solve. And Vittorio seated at the head with Talia at his right hand. His hand rested on the back of her chair. Public. So, his mother began, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision. Vittorio tells us you're special. Talia felt the weight of the word. Not girlfriend. Not partner. She's pregnant, Vittorio said bluntly. Silence. His mother's expression didn't change. His uncle's eyes sharpened. The cousins exchanged glances. With your child? His mother asked. Yes. How convenient. Talia's stomach dropped. Careful, Mama, Vittorio said softly. Dangerously. I'm simply observing. You're implying Talia trapped me. Which is both insulting and inaccurate. His fingers tightened slightly on the back of Talia's chair. She didn't even tell me. I figured it out myself. So perhaps redirect your suspicions toward something productive. His uncle leaned forward. And her background? Family connections? Security clearances? Being handled? Vittorio, you can't just. I can. And I have. He turned his head slightly toward Talia, his expression softening in a way that made her chest ache. Any other questions? His mother studied them both for a long moment. Then surprisingly she smiled. Welcome to the family, Talia, she said. I hope you're prepared. Moretti men don't love halfway. Later that night, they returned to the penthouse in silence. Talia kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch, exhausted from the weight of scrutiny and judgment. Vittorio poured himself a drink, whiskey neat, but didn't drink it. He just stood by the window staring out at the city like it held answers. Your family hates me, Talia said quietly. They're cautious. It's different. Your mother thinks I'm a gold digger. My mother thinks everyone is suspect until proven otherwise. Give her time. Talia pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough for? Vittorio was across the room in 3 strides. He knelt in front of her, hands resting on either side of her thighs on the couch, caging her in without trapping her. Listen to me, he said quietly. You are strong enough. You've already survived a man who mocked you in public. You've carried this secret alone for weeks. You walked into a room of people who could destroy you with a phone call and held your ground. His hand moved to rest gently on her stomach. You're growing my child while dealing with my world. Don't you dare tell me you're not strong enough. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. His thumb traced slow circles over her belly through the fabric of her dress. Every second of every day I'm terrified something will happen to you. That someone will figure out how much you mean to me. That I'll fail to protect you. He looked up and the raw vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. The kiss happened without decision. One moment they were staring at each other, the next his mouth was on hers, desperate, claiming, worshipful. His hands framed her face like she was something precious and breakable, even as he kissed her like he wanted to crawl inside her skin and never leave. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vittorio rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he murmured. Just, let me hold you. It wasn't a demand. It was a plea. Talia nodded and he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to his bedroom. Their bedroom, she corrected mentally, and laid her down with devastating gentleness. He undressed her slowly, reverently, replacing her formal dress with one of his shirts. Then he stripped to his boxers and climbed in behind her, pulling her back against his chest. His hand splayed across her stomach. "Mine," he whispered against her hair. She threaded her fingers through his. "Ours," she corrected. His answering exhale sounded like relief. 2 weeks later, charity gala. Talia adjusted the flowing emerald gown Vittorio had insisted on buying her. It disguised her growing bump perfectly while making her feel like someone important. Someone who belonged. The gala was a sea of wealth and power. Politicians, business moguls, and she was learning to recognize them, carefully disguised criminals. Vittorio kept her close. Always touching. A hand at the small of her back, fingers intertwined with hers, his body angled toward her protectively in every conversation. "You're staring," she murmured as another couple drifted away. "I'm admiring," he corrected, his thumb stroking the inside of her wrist. "People are noticing." "Good. Let them." Before she could respond, a man approached, tall, handsome in a too smooth way, with the kind of smile that set off warning bells. "Vittorio," the man said. "And who's this stunning creature?" Talia felt Vittorio's entire body go still beside her. "Talia Russo," he said flatly. "My fiancé." Her breath caught. Fiancé. They hadn't. Fiancé. The man's eyes gleamed with interest as they raked over Talia. "How surprising. I didn't know you were the settling down type, Moretti. There's a lot you don't know about me, Santoro." Santoro. The name triggered a memory, something Vittorio had mentioned. A rival family. Ambitious. Dangerous. "Well, congratulations," Santoro said, still looking at Talia in a way that made her skin crawl. "You're a lucky woman, Miss Russo. Though I have to wonder." "Wonder silently," Vittorio interrupted, his voice dropping into something lethal. "Somewhere else." Santoro's smile never wavered. "Touchy. Must be love." He leaned slightly toward Talia. "If you ever tire of Moretti intensity, I'm much better company." Vittorio moved. Not violently, they were in public, surrounded by witnesses, but with terrifying precision. One moment he was beside Talia, the next he was in Santoro's space, his voice too low for anyone else to hear but loud enough for Talia to catch every word. "Touch her. Look at her that way again. Speak to her without my explicit permission. And I will end you." Each word was punctuated with cold promise. "Not quickly. Not cleanly. You'll disappear piece by piece until even your own mother forgets you existed." Santoro's smile finally cracked. He stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. "Understood. My apologies, Vittorio. Miss Russo." He nodded and vanished into the crowd. Vittorio returned to Talia's side, his hand finding hers immediately. "Are you okay?" His voice had shifted back to gentle concern, the violence tucked away so seamlessly it was almost frightening. "You called me your fiancé," she said instead of answering. His jaw tightened. "I know. I should have asked you properly. I'm sorry. When he looked at you like that." "Hey." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not complaining. Just surprised." "Does that mean you'd say yes?" The question was quiet. Vulnerable. "If I asked properly?" Her heart hammered. "Are you asking?" "Not here. Not like this." His eyes searched hers. "But when I do, Talia, understand it's forever. There's no halfway with me. No trial period. When I claim you publicly, it's permanent." Sounds terrifying. It should. His thumb traced over her knuckles. "But I'll spend every day proving it's also safe." Before she could respond, she felt it, a flutter. So faint she almost missed it. Her hand flew to her stomach. Vittorio's eyes widened. "Was that?" "I think so." Wonder bloomed across her face. "I think I just felt the baby." His expression transformed, awe and possession in something so tender it made her chest ache. "Can I?" His hand hovered over her stomach. She guided it to the right spot, and they stood there together in the middle of a crowded gala, waiting for another flutter that didn't come. It didn't matter. The moment had already changed everything. 3 days later, the ambush. Talia was leaving her old apartment, one last trip to collect her remaining things, when she saw him, Marcus, waiting by her car. Her stomach sank. "Hey," he said, pushing off the vehicle with false casualty. Been trying to reach you. My number hasn't changed. No, but your status apparently has. His smile was ugly. Saw you at that gala. Looking cozy with Vittorio Moretti. Talia's hand tightened on her bag. That's none of your business. Isn't it? We were together for 3 years, Talia. And now what, 2 months after we break up you're engaged to a mob boss? How does that happen? Goodbye, Marcus. She tried to move past him. He blocked her path. I know you're pregnant, he said quietly. Ice flooded her veins. What? I'm not stupid. The weight gain comment? I put it together later. The timing works out to right after our breakup. His eyes hardened. Is it mine? No. You sure? Because I'd hate for Moretti to find out his precious fiancé might be carrying someone else's bastard. Rage, white-hot and cleansing, swept through her. The baby is Vittorio's, she said coldly. And even if it wasn't, it wouldn't be yours. We broke up before I even met him. Did you, though? Marcus stepped closer. Or did you overlap? Maybe that's why you were so eager to end things. You ended things, she snapped. You dumped me for your secretary and spent 6 months making me feel worthless. So don't you dare rewrite history now that I'm with someone who actually threatens people? They both turned. Vittorio stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression perfectly calm. But his eyes. God, his eyes were murder. Vittorio, Talia started. Get in the car, Bellezza. He didn't look away from Marcus. Please. She hesitated, then obeyed, sliding into the passenger seat of the SUV that had apparently been following her. Through the window, she watched Vittorio approach Marcus with predatory grace. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched Marcus's face go from smug to pale to terrified in under a minute. Vittorio leaned in close, said something final, then walked calmly to the driver's side and got in. He didn't speak, just drove. After 10 minutes of silence, Talia couldn't take it anymore. What did you say to him? That if he ever approaches you again, I'll make sure he disappears so completely even forensics won't find him. Her breath caught. Vittorio. I'm not joking, Talia. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. That man stood between you and safety. He questioned my child's paternity. He tried to threaten you with exposure. He finally looked at her, and the raw possessiveness in his gaze made her stomach flip. I don't take threats to my family lightly. We're not married yet. Technicality. He reached over, lacing their fingers together. You're mine. That baby is mine. Nothing else matters. She should have been disturbed by his intensity. She wasn't. When are you going to ask me properly? The question slipped out. His lips quirked. Impatient. Curious. Soon. He brought her knuckles to his lips, kissing them gently. When I'm certain I can give you the proposal you deserve. Not rushed. Not forced by circumstances. His eyes softened. I want you to choose me, Talia. Not because of the baby. Not because I've made it impossible to leave. But because you actually want forever with me. Emotion clogged her throat. I already do, she whispered. His responding smile was devastating. Good, he murmured. Because I've been in love with you since the gallery. The baby just made it harder to pretend I could ever let you go. For weeks later. The pregnancy was progressing perfectly. Talia was 16 weeks, showing more now, glowing in that way people always talked about. Vittorio had become even more protective, if that was possible. Constantly touching her stomach, talking to the baby, making plans for a future that felt increasingly real. They'd started discussing names. His family had warmed to her, slowly, cautiously but genuine. Everything should have felt perfect. But Talia couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. She mentioned it to Vittorio over breakfast. You're being paranoid, he said gently, refilling her orange juice. Maybe. But. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then answered. Yes. Talia watched his expression shudder. When? Pause. How many? Another pause. Get everyone to the estate. Now. He hung up and looked at Talia with barely controlled fury. We need to leave. What's wrong? Santoro made a move. Ambushed one of our shipments. Killed 3 of my men. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his gun. It's a declaration of war. But. You're going to the estate where security is tightest. Non-negotiable. 20 minutes later, she was being ushered into the heavily fortified Moretti family compound, Vittorio barking orders in Italian to the small army of security personnel. He pulled her aside before leaving. Stay here, he ordered, cupping her face. Don't leave this house for any reason. My mother will stay with you. So will. I'm scared. I know. He kissed her forehead. But I will handle this and I will come back to you. That's a promise. Vittorio. I love you, he said fiercely. You and our baby. Nothing else matters. Then he was gone. The estate 6 hours later. Night had fallen. Talia sat in the main living room with Vittorio's mother, Maria, who was surprising calm given her son was potentially in a shootout somewhere. He'll be fine, Maria said, pouring tea with steady hands. Vittorio is his father's son. He doesn't lose. What if this time? He won't. Maria fixed her with a knowing look. Because he has you to come home to. Trust me, dear. A Moretti man with something to protect is the most dangerous creature alive. Talia wanted to believe her. The front door opened. Both women stood. Vittorio walked in, blood on his shirt, exhaustion carved into his features, but alive. Whole. Talia ran to him. He caught her, burying his face in her hair, holding her with shaking hands. It's over, he murmured. Santoro's done. He won't be a problem anymore. She didn't ask what that meant. She just held him tighter. That night, their bedroom. Vittorio was in the shower, washing away evidence of whatever he'd done. Talia sat on the bed, hands cradling her bump, mind racing. This was her life now. Violence and protection. Danger and devotion. A man who would kill for her without hesitation. He should be terrified. But she felt safe. The shower cut off. Vittorio emerged a moment later, water still dripping from his dark hair, a towel wrapped around his waist. The tattoos were fully visible now, across his chest, down his ribs, mapping his history in ink and scars. He saw her expression and froze. Second thoughts, he asked quietly. No. She stood crossing to him. But I need to know, will our child grow up in this? The violence? The constant threats? His jaw tightened. No. Vittorio. I mean it. He pulled her close, one hand spreading across her stomach possessively. I'm already making arrangements. Transitioning the family business toward legitimate enterprises. It'll take time, but by the time this baby is old enough to understand, the Moretti name will mean something different. You do that? Give up your power. For you. For them. His eyes burned into hers. I'd give up everything. The kiss was inevitable. Flaming. Tinged with desperation and relief and love so fierce it bordered on obsession. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vittorio swept her into his arms and carried her to the bed. Stay with me, he murmured against her lips. Forever. Yes, she breathed. What happened next was tender and intense, a claiming that was both gentle and desperate. Hands reverent on growing curves. Whispered promises between kisses. A connection that felt like sealing a vow neither had spoken aloud yet. Afterwards, wrapped in expensive sheets and each other, Vittorio's hand rested on her stomach as always. Marry me, he said quietly. Talia's breath caught. What? Not as an order. Not because of the baby. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with devastating sincerity. Marry me because I love you. Because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. Because when I imagine my future, there's no version that doesn't include you. Tears slipped down her temples. Yes, she whispered. His kiss tasted like relief and possession in equal measure. 3 days later, morning sickness returns. Talia woke to nausea so intense she barely made it to the bathroom. Vittorio was right behind her, holding her hair, rubbing circles on her back, murmuring reassurances in Italian. When she finally stopped, he carried her back to bed and brought her crackers and ginger tea. I'm disgusting, she muttered. You're pregnant with my child, he corrected, sitting beside her. You're perfect. Your child is trying to kill me. Our child has good taste. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Takes after their father. Despite everything, she laughed. When do you want to get married? He asked suddenly. I don't know. After the baby? When I can fit into a dress. Or, he countered. We could do it now. Small ceremony. Just family. Before you get too uncomfortable. You want a pregnant bride? I want my bride. His hand cupped her face. Pregnant, sick, exhausted doesn't matter. I just want it official. Her heart melted. Okay. Yeah. She smiled. Let's get married. 2 weeks later, the wedding. It was small as promised. Just immediate family in the estate's garden, under an arch of white roses. Talia wore a simple cream dress that accommodated her bump beautifully. Vittorio wore a tuxedo and an expression of such fierce devotion she almost cried before the ceremony even started. The vows were traditional. But when it was time for the rings, Vittorio had a surprise. This belonged to my grandmother, he said, sliding an antique diamond onto her finger. She told me before she died to give it only to a woman who could handle the weight of the Moretti name while still being strong enough to change it. He looked into her eyes. That's you, Talia. He definitely cried then. When the officiant pronounced them married, Vittorio's kiss was possessive and gentle and so full of promise she felt it down to her soul. Wine, he murmured against her lips. Ours, she corrected as always. His smile was pure happiness. The reception, an unwanted guest. They were cutting the cake when Talia felt Vittorio stiffen beside her. She followed his gaze to the entrance of the tent. A man stood there, older, distinguished, with cold eyes that swept over the celebration with disdain. Who is that? Talia whispered. My father. Her blood ran cold. Vittorio had mentioned his father exactly once. A man who'd built the Moretti empire on blood and betrayal, who'd retired years ago but still cast a long shadow. A man Vittorio hadn't invited to the wedding. This is unexpected, Vittorio's father said, approaching them with calculated ease. A wedding I wasn't informed about? You weren't invited, Vittorio replied flatly. I'm your father. You're a stranger who shares my last name. Vittorio's arm tightened around Talia's waist. And you're not welcome here. Is that any way to treat family? His father's eyes slid to Talia, lingering on her stomach with distaste. Especially when you're starting one of your own. With this. The insult hung in the air. Talia felt Vittorio's entire body coil with rage. Leave, he said quietly. Too quietly. Before I forget your family and treat you like I would any other man who disrespected my wife. Your wife. His father laughed bitterly. You gave up everything I built for. For love. Vittorio stepped forward, positioning himself between his father and Talia. For a future that doesn't involve corruption and blood money. For a child who'll grow up knowing their father chose them over an empire. His voice dropped. You taught me many things, old man. But you never taught me that some things are worth more than power. Talia did. And our child will. Silence. Then his father smiled, cold, calculating. You'll regret this weakness. You'll regret this weakness. It's not weakness. It's the only strength that matters. His father left without another word. The reception continued, but the damage was done. That night, they lay in bed, Talia curled against Vittorio's chest, his hand as always, resting protectively on her stomach. I'm sorry, he murmured. About my father. You don't control him. No. But I brought you into this world. Into his scrutiny. His hand tightened slightly on her bump. If I'd known. You'd what? Not marry me? Not have this baby? She tilted her head back to look at him. Vittorio, I chose this. I chose you. Your father's opinion doesn't change that. He'll cause problems. Then we'll handle them. She pressed a kiss to his jaw. Together. His exhale was shaky. Relieved. I don't deserve you, he whispered. You're right. She smiled. But you're stuck with me anyway. His answering laugh was soft and genuine, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But perfection never lasts. Not in their world. And 3 days later, everything would shatter. 3 days after the wedding. The doctor's office was quiet, sterile, expensive. 20-week anatomy scan. Talia lay on the examination table, gel cold on her exposed belly, Vittorio's hand gripping hers with barely restrained intensity. There's the head, the obstetrician said, pointing to the ultrasound screen. And the spine. 4 chambers of the heart, all looking perfect. Vittorio leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the grainy image with an expression of pure wonder. And the sex? He asked quietly. Can you tell? The doctor smiled. Would you like to know? They both nodded. Congratulations. It's a boy. The words hung in the air. A son. Talia looked at Vittorio and saw something crack open in his expression. Joy and terror and fierce, overwhelming love all at once. His hand moved to her stomach, pressing gently. A son, he repeated, voice rough. Yeah, she whispered. The doctor continued pointing out features. Fingers, toes, healthy kidneys. But Talia was watching Vittorio. Watching him fall even deeper into love with a child he hadn't met yet. Watching him transform from dangerous crime lord to devoted father right before her eyes. Can we have copies of the images? Vittorio asked. Of course. Later in the car he couldn't stop looking at the ultrasound photos. Dante, he said suddenly. Talia glanced over. What? His name. Dante Moretti. He looked at her, vulnerable in a way that still surprised her. If you agree. Donna, she tested. Then smiled. I love it. His answering smile was devastating. But as they drove back to the penthouse, Talia couldn't shake the feeling they were being followed. That evening, the penthouse. Talia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker below, one hand absently rubbing her growing bump. 20 weeks. Halfway there. In 4.5 months she'd be holding her son. Their son. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Behind her she heard Vittorio end another phone call, the 5th in the past hour. His voice had been getting progressively sharper with each conversation. Something was wrong. She turned as he approached, exhaustion carved into his features. What's happening? She asked. He hesitated. That alone told her how bad it was. Vittorio. My father's been making moves, he admitted. Reaching out to old contacts. Questioning my decisions. Spreading rumors that I've gone soft, that the family is vulnerable. Ice flooded her veins. Why? Because I chose you over the empire. Because I'm transitioning us toward legitimate business. Because... He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his usual control. Because he sees love as weakness and he's trying to prove it. What does that mean for us? It means I need to go to Sicily. The words came out flat. Final. Meet with the old families. Prove I'm still in control. Rebuild alliances my father is trying to destroy. How long? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Her heart sank. That's too long. I know. He closed the distance between them, hands framing her face. But if I don't handle this now, the instability will only grow. And instability in our world means danger. For you. For Dante. He hated that he was right. I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. Vittorio. Talia, you're 5 months pregnant. You'll be traveling to meetings with men who'd use you as leverage without hesitation. It's not safe. And staying here while your father undermines you is safer? He flinched. You'll have security. The entire team. My uncle will be here and my mother. I don't want security. I want my husband. The word, husband, still felt new. Precious. His expression softened. I want you with me too. Every second of every day. But I can't risk you. Not for this. She knew he was right. He hated it anyway. Promise me you'll come back, she whispered. Always. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, then dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his face against her stomach. I promise both of you. She threaded her fingers through his hair, holding him close, and tried not to think about all the ways promises could break. 2 days later, the airport. Private terminal. Private jet. Security everywhere. Vittorio stood with Talia in the shadow of the aircraft, both of them reluctant to let go. 2 weeks, he said firmly. I'll call every night. I know. And if anything feels wrong, anything, you tell security immediately. I will. Talia. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I need you to promise me you'll be careful. No unnecessary risks. No going out without full security detail. No. She kissed him to stop the spiral. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I love you, he murmured. Both of you. We love you too. She pressed his hand against her stomach where Dante was currently doing acrobatics. Come home to us. Nothing could stop me. One final kiss, desperate and claiming, then he was gone, boarding the jet without looking back. Talia watched the plane disappear into the sky and tried to ignore the hollow ache in her chest. 1 week later. The days crawled by. Vittorio called every night like clockwork. Late for him, early evening for her. And they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. The meetings. The baby. Plans for the nursery. Names they'd already chosen but kept second-guessing. It should have been enough. But Talia felt the absence like a physical wound. She spent most of her time at the penthouse, occasionally visiting the Moretti estate where Maria would fuss over her and share stories about Vittorio as a boy. He was so serious, Maria said one afternoon over tea. Even at 8 years old. Always watching. Always protecting. His father? Talia asked carefully. Maria's expression darkened. His father was a hard man who believed love was a liability. He tried to beat that softness out of Vittorio. Clearly he failed. I'm glad he did. So am I, dear. Maria patted her hand. My son needed someone to remind him that strength and love aren't mutually exclusive. You've given him that. The words settled something in Talia's chest. But that night, alone in the too large bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Day 9, the call. Talia was organizing the nursery, a room Vittorio had insisted on preparing immediately, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Hello. Silence. Then, Mrs. Moretti. The voice was cold. Familiar. Vittorio's father. Her blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? I have access to many things you'd prefer I didn't. Pause. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. His tone sharpened. My son is making dangerous decisions. Weakening the family. Creating vulnerabilities that will get people killed. He's transitioning to legitimate business. He's abandoning an empire for a woman carrying his bastard. Rage, white-hot and cleansing, swept through her. Dante is not a bastard, she said coldly. We're married. Wiggly. In every way that matters. A rushed ceremony doesn't change what you are. A distraction. A weakness he can't afford. If you think love makes him weak, you don't know your son at all. I know, his father said quietly, that every man who's chosen love over power in this family has ended up dead. And I won't watch my son follow that pattern because of you. The threat was clear. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Leave him. Disappear. I'll provide financial support for the child, but you cannot stay in Vittorio's life. No. Then you're condemning him. The line went dead. Talia stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, heart hammering. She should tell security. Should call Vittorio. The penthouse door opened. She spun, expecting security. It was Maria. Talia, we need to leave, Vittorio's mother said urgently. Now. What's wrong? Your ex-boyfriend. Marcus. Maria's expression was grim. He's been making inquiries. Asking questions about you and Vittorio. About the baby. So someone paid him to do it. Maria grabbed Talia's arm gently but firmly. Someone's using him to gather information. Which means they're planning something. Vittorio's father. Maria's eyes widened. How did you? He just called me. Told me to leave Vittorio. Murda. Maria switched to rapid Italian, cursing. Then back to English. We're going to the estate. No. Full lockdown protocol. Maria, I can't just. Talia. Vittorio's mother fixed her with a look that brooked no argument. I've seen this pattern before. When someone threatens the family, they escalate quickly. You and that baby are the most vulnerable targets. We need to move you somewhere more secure. Talia's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. Okay, she whispered. The estate. That night. The compound was a fortress. High walls. Armed guards. Surveillance everywhere. Talia sat in the main living room, Maria on one side, Vittorio's uncle Lorenzo on the other, while security personnel moved through the house like shadows. Have you told Vittorio? Lorenzo asked. I tried, Maria said. He's in a meeting. I left a message. Talia pulled out her phone and dialed. It rang once. Twice. Then, Bellezza. I was just about to call you. The sound of his voice nearly broke her. Vittorio, something's happened. I know. His voice was tight with barely controlled fury. My uncle texted me. My father called you. Yes. And Marcus is being handled. The words were flat. Ew. I'm catching the next flight home. I'll be there in 12 hours. You don't have to. Talia. He cut her off gently. Someone threatened my wife and child. There is nothing more important than getting back to you. The meetings can wait. Cicely can wait. You can't. Tears burned her eyes. I'm scared. I know, Amore. But you're at the estate. You're surrounded by people who die before letting anything happen to you. And in 12 hours I'll be there and I will end this. The promise in his voice was absolute. I love you, she whispered. I love you more than anything in this world. His voice softened. Put my mother on. She handed the phone to Maria, listening as Vittorio gave rapid-fire instructions in Italian. When Maria hung up, she looked at Talia with something like pity. He's furious, Maria said. At me. At his father. At the situation. At himself for leaving you. She squeezed Talia's hand. My son doesn't handle threats to what's his very well. What's going to happen? Maria was quiet for a long moment. War, she said finally. Between father and son. Between the old ways and the new. Between power and love. She met Talia's eyes. And you, dear girl, are standing at the center of it. Hour 6, the breach. Talia was trying to sleep, unsuccessfully when the alarm went off. Loud. Piercing. Terrifying. Maria burst into the room. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Breach in the south perimeter. Security's engaged, but we're not taking chances. She pulled Talia from the bed. There's a safe room in the basement. Come on. They ran. Through hallways Talia was still learning. Downstairs that seemed endless. The sound of gunfire echoed above them, distant but real. Too real. Lorenzo met them at a reinforced steel door. Inside. Both of you. What about? Maria started. I'll hold the line. Go. The door sealed behind them with a heavy thunk. The safe room was large, well-stocked, and utterly terrifying in its necessity. Talia sank onto a bench, arms wrapped around her stomach, trying to breathe through the panic. Dante's okay, she murmured to herself. He's okay. He's safe. We're safe. But her hands were shaking. Maria sat beside her, pulling her close. It's going to be fine. Security has handled worse. This is because of me. This is because of Vittorio's father's pride and cruelty. Don't you dare blame yourself. Above them the gunfire intensified. Then gradually stopped. Silence. Talia's heart hammered in the quiet. Minutes crawled by. Finally Lorenzo's voice came through the intercom. All clear. Threat neutralized. The door opened. Talia stumbled out, needing to see for herself that they were safe. The estate was intact. Security personnel moved with efficient calm. And in the main hall. Bodies. Not many. 3, maybe 4. Covered with sheets. Talia turned away, bow rising. Our men, she asked Lorenzo. His expression was grim. 2 wounded. None dead. These, he gestured to the covered bodies, were the intruders. Who sent them? We're working on it. But given the timing. He didn't need to finish. Vittorio's father. Maria guided Talia to a sitting room away from the aftermath. You should try to rest. I can't. Talia's hands trembled. Maria, what if they'd gotten through? What if Dante? But they didn't. You're safe. For how long? The question tore out of her. How long until the next attempt? The next threat? How am I supposed to bring a child into this? Maria knelt in front of her, taking both her hands. Listen to me. I raised Vittorio in this world. I know its dangers. But I also know that when a Moretti man loves something, he protects it with everything he has. My son will end this threat. And then he'll build you a life where Dante can grow up safe. You can't promise that. No, Maria admitted. But I believe it. Because I've never seen Vittorio love anyone the way he loves you. And that kind of love. It moves mountains. It ends wars. It changes everything. Talia wanted to believe her. But right now, sitting in a house that had just been attacked, all she felt was terrified. Hour 12 Vittorio returns. Talia was standing at the window, watching dawn break over the estate, when she heard the helicopter. Her heart lurched. She ran. Through the house. Out the front door. Across the lawn to the helipad where the helicopter was touching down. The moment Vittorio stepped out, his eyes found hers. And she broke. She ran to him and he caught her, lifting her off her feet despite her pregnancy, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm here," he murmured into her hair. "I'm here. You're safe. Dante's safe. I've got you." He was crying too hard to respond. He carried her back into the house, ignoring everyone trying to brief him, focused only on getting her somewhere private. In his childhood bedroom he finally set her down, kneeling in front of her, hands framing her belly. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me everything." So she did. The phone call from his father. Marcus making inquiries. The attack. The terror of hiding in a safe room while gunfire echoed above. With every word, Vittorio's expression grew darker. "My father did this," he said finally. Flat. "Told. You don't know that." "I do." He stood, and suddenly he wasn't her gentle husband but the Mafia kingpin everyone feared. "He called you. Threatened you. Then sent men to my home. My family's home. To what? Scare you? Kidnap you? Kill you. Vittorio." He crossed a line. His hands clenched into fists. "There's protocol. Rules. You don't touch family. You don't target pregnant women. You don't." He broke off, breathing hard. "He's been trying to undermine me for months. Fine. I could handle political maneuvering. But this is unforgivable." Talia stood crossing to him. "What are you going to do?" His eyes met hers and she saw the decision already made. "End it," he said simply. "One way or another, this ends today." The confrontation. Vittorio's father had a villa on the coast. Isolated. Defensible. Perfect for a man who'd made too many enemies. Vittorio arrived alone, against every security protocol, against his uncle's advice, against Talia's desperate pleas. "This is between him and me," he'd said. "And it ends today." Now he stood in his father's study, the older man sitting behind an ornate desk like a king holding court. "I wondered when you'd come," his father said. "You sent men to attack my home. I sent men to retrieve what's mine. The estate. The power you're throwing away for." "Say her name," Vittorio interrupted coldly. "Go ahead. Insult my wife one more time." His father smiled. "She's made you weak. She's made me human. There's a difference. In our world, humanity is weakness." "Then maybe," Vittorio said quietly, "our world needs to change." His father laughed. "You sound like your mother. All noble ideals and moral superiority. Look where it got her. Trapped in a marriage to a man who didn't love her, raising a son in a world designed to break him. She raised a son who knows the difference between power and cruelty, who understands that strength isn't measured in bodies but in what you're willing to protect." Vittorio stepped closer. "You taught me to be ruthless, to never show weakness, to take what I want and destroy anyone who stands in my way. And you've forgotten those lessons." "No," Vittorio said softly. "I'm applying them. To you." Understanding flickered across his father's face. "You wouldn't." "I would." Vittorio's voice was calm. "Final. For Talia. For Dante. For the family I'm building that doesn't require blood and fear to survive. I would do anything. I'm your father. You stopped being my father the moment you threatened my wife." Silence hung between them. Then Vittorio placed a document on the desk. "Sign it." "What is this?" "Your resignation. Full transfer of power. Public acknowledgement that I'm the head of this family." Vittorio's eyes were cold. "Sign it and you can retire quietly. Live out your remaining years in peace. Refuse and I'll destroy you so completely even your name will be erased from family history." His father stared at the document. At his son. At the future he'd lost. "You've changed," he said finally. "Yes," Vittorio agreed. "I fell in love. I became a husband. Soon I'll be a father. And none of those things make me weak. They make me dangerous in ways you never understood." His father picked up the pen. Hesitated. Then signed. Vittorio took the document, folded it carefully and turned to leave. Vittorio. He paused. She won't make you happy, his father said. Love never does. Vittorio looked back and for a moment there was pity in his eyes. Then I'm sorry you never found it. He left without another word. The estate, that evening. Talia was in the nursery when Vittorio returned. She'd been arranging baby books. Mindless activity to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling. The door opened. She turned. Vittorio stood there, exhausted but whole, and the relief that flooded through her was almost painful. It's done, he said quietly. What's done? All of it. My father. The threats. The instability. He crossed to her, pulling her gently into his arms. You're safe. Dante's safe. No one will threaten you again. She pulled back to look at him. What did you do? What was necessary? His hand moved to her belly. I chose you. Both of you. Over everything. Vittorio. I'm out, he said simply. Officially. The family business is being restructured. Legitimate ventures only. And I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations entirely. Her breath caught. You're giving it all up? I'm choosing what matters. He cupped her face. Empire, legacy, power. None of it means anything if I lose you. If Dante grows up in danger. If I become the man my father was, too proud to see that love isn't weakness but the only strength worth having. Tears slid down her cheeks. You're sure? She whispered. More sure than I've been about anything in my life. He kissed her forehead. Her nose. Her lips. You and Dante are my empire now. Everything else is just details. She kissed him then, desperate and grateful and so full of love it hurt. When they finally broke apart, Vittorio led her to the rocking chair in the corner and pulled her onto his lap, his hand settling over her stomach where Dante was moving. Tell me about him, Vittorio murmured. What did I miss? So she did. The kicks. The hiccups. The way Dante seemed most active at night, right when she was trying to sleep. Vittorio listened, asking questions, smiling at her descriptions, looking at her like she'd hung the stars. I'm sorry I wasn't here, he said eventually. You're here now. That's what matters. Still. His thumb traced circles on her belly. I missed a week of this. Of you. Of him. I won't make that mistake again. You had to handle. I had to protect you. And I did. But from now on I protect you by staying close. Not by leaving. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat and for the first time in days felt truly safe. 3 months later. Talia was 36 weeks pregnant and miserable. Swollen ankles. Constant back pain. The inability to find a comfortable position for more than 5 minutes at a time. Vittorio had become even more attentive, if that was possible. Constantly asking if she needed anything, adjusting pillows, rubbing her feet, reading pregnancy books like they were strategy manuals. You're hovering, she said one evening as he fluffed her pillow for the 3rd time. I'm attentive. You're suffocating. He grinned, unrepentant. Get used to it. Once Dante's here it'll be worse. She couldn't help but smile. I'm counting on it. They'd spent the past 3 months preparing. The nursery was finished, soft blues and whites, with hand-painted murals of Italian landscapes. The Moretti family business had been successfully restructured, with Vittorio consulting but no longer running day-to-day operations. His father had disappeared to a villa in Greece and good riddance. Life had settled into something almost normal. Almost. Because there was still the pregnancy. The impending birth. The fear that something would go wrong. What if I'm a terrible mother? Talia asked suddenly. Vittorio looked up from the baby book he was reading. Impossible. You don't know that. I do. He set the book aside and moved to sit beside her on the couch. You're already a wonderful mother. The way you talk to him. Protect him. The way you've handled everything thrown at you with grace and strength. His hand covered hers on her belly. Dante's lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you, she corrected. His answering smile was soft. Genuine. I used to think love was a distraction, he said quietly. Something that made you vulnerable. Weak. Then I met you and I realized I'd been defining strength wrong my entire life. He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. You are my strength, Talia. You and Dante. Everything else is just noise. She was crying again, stupid pregnancy hormones, But these were happy tears. I love you, she whispered. I love you more. Not possible. We'll debate it later. He stood, offering his hand. Right now you need rest. Doctor's orders. You're not a doctor. I'm your husband. Close enough. She let him help her up, let him guide her to their bedroom, let him undress her carefully and replace her clothes with one of his shirts. As they lay in bed, Vittorio's hand resting protectively on her belly, Talia felt something shift. Vittorio. I think that was a contraction. He sat up so fast he nearly fell out of bed. What? I'm not sure. His felt, another wave. Stronger this time. Yeah. That's a contraction. Vittorio was already moving, grabbing his phone, calling the doctor, pulling on clothes with the kind of controlled panic she would have found amusing if she wasn't also panicking. It's too early, she said. You're 36 weeks. That's full term enough. He was pulling her carefully to her feet. Can you walk? I think so. Another contraction. Okay, maybe not. He swept her into his arms without hesitation. Hospital. Now. The birth. Labor was exactly as awful as everyone had warned. Hours of contractions. Pain that redefined her understanding of the word. Vittorio holding her hand and whispering encouragements in Italian that she barely understood but appreciated anyway. I can't do this, she gasped at hour 7. You can. You are. He pressed a kiss to her sweat-dampened forehead. You're the strongest person I know. I hate you. I know. I love you too. Despite everything, she laughed. Then another contraction hit and she definitely hated him. At hour 9, the doctor finally said the words she'd been desperate to hear. It's time to push. And Talia did. With everything she had. With Vittorio's hand gripping hers so tightly she'd probably have bruises. With every ounce of strength and stubbornness and love she possessed. And then, a cry. Small. Furious. Perfect. It's a boy, the doctor announced unnecessarily, placing a tiny, squirming bundle on Talia's chest. Talia looked down at her son, dark hair, tiny fists, eyes squeezed shut as he wailed, and felt her entire world realign. Hi baby, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. Beside her, Vittorio had gone completely still. She looked up and saw tears streaming down his face. Vittorio. He's perfect, he choked out. Talia, he's perfect. Do you want to hold him? He nodded, incapable of speech. The nurse helped transfer Dante into Vittorio's arms, and the sight of her dangerous, powerful husband holding their tiny son with such overwhelming tenderness broke something open in Talia's chest. Hello, Dante, Vittorio murmured in Italian. I'm your papa. And I promise you, his voice cracked. I promise I will protect you and love you and give you a life better than the one I had. You will never doubt you're wanted. You will never question that you're loved. And you will grow up knowing your mother is the most extraordinary woman in the world. Dante stopped crying as if recognizing his father's voice. Vittorio looked at Talia, and the love in his eyes was so fierce it stole her breath. Thank you, he whispered. For him. For this. For choosing me. Always, she breathed. 3 days later, going home. The penthouse had been transformed. Flowers everywhere. Balloons. A massive welcome home Dante banner that was definitely Maria's doing. Talia sat in the nursery's rocking chair, Dante sleeping against her chest, Vittorio kneeling beside them with his hand resting gently on his son's back. I still can't believe he's real, Vittorio murmured. 3 days of diaper changes haven't convinced you? He smiled. Those especially feel surreal. Talia laughed softly, careful not to wake the baby. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Dante sleep, marveling at his tiny features. Do you regret it? Talia asked suddenly. Giving up the empire? Vittorio looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Are you insane? I'm serious. You walked away from everything you'd built. Your legacy. Your power. Talia. He cupped her face with his free hand. Look at him. Look at what we made. This. He gestured to encompass all 3 of them. This is my legacy. Not money or power or reputation. This. Our family. Our son. Our future. But. No buts. I would give up 1,000 empires for one more day with you. For one more moment holding my son. For the chance to wake up next to my wife every morning and know that I chose love over everything else. His thumb brushed her cheek. That's not sacrifice, Belezza. That's the easiest decision I've ever made. She kissed him then, soft and grateful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Dante stirred, making small noises that indicated he'd be awake and hungry soon. "My turn," Vittorio said, carefully taking his son. "Go rest. I've got this." "You sure?" "Talia, I spent 10 years running a criminal empire. I think I can handle one very small human for an hour." She laughed and headed to their bedroom, pausing in the doorway to look back. Vittorio stood at the window, Dante cradled in his arms, talking softly in Italian about all the things he'd show him, teach him, protect him from. And Talia realized that Maria had been right. A Moretti man in love really could change the world. He'd certainly changed hers. 6 months later. Dante was perfect. 6 months old, laughing, grabbing everything in sight and completely adored by everyone who met him. Talia stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Vittorio attempt to wrestle their son into a onesie. "He's fast," Vittorio complained as Dante squirmed. "He's 6 months old. Deceptively fast." She laughed, coming over to help. Together they managed to dress Dante for the day, though not without several breaks for kisses and tickles that made him shriek with delight. "Your family is coming for dinner tonight," Talia reminded him. "I know. My mother's probably already cooking enough food to feed an army. And your uncle wants to discuss the new expansion. Which I'll handle." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But not until after Dante's bath. Priorities." She smiled, leaning into him, and marveled at how different life was now. They'd moved to a house outside the city. Large, secure, with a yard where Dante could eventually play. Vittorio consulted for the family business but spent most of his time being a husband and father. They had date nights and family dinners and all the mundane, beautiful moments that made up a life. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, Vittorio still woke from nightmares about threats that no longer existed. Some days, Talia still felt the echo of fear from when she'd hidden in that safe room. And they both knew the past would always be there, lurking. But they were building something new. Something better. "What are you thinking about?" Vittorio asked softly. "How lucky I am," she admitted. "That Marcus insulted me in that cafe. That you were there. That everything happened exactly the way it did to lead us here. That's not luck, Belezza." He turned her to face him, Dante babbling happily in his arms between them. "That's fate. You were always meant to be mine. And I was always meant to be yours." He kissed her softly. "The universe just had to make sure we found each other." "That's very romantic for a former crime lord." "I contain multitudes." She laughed, and Dante laughed with her, and Vittorio smiled with such pure joy it took her breath away. Later, after dinner with his family, after Dante was asleep, after they'd collapsed into bed exhausted and happy, Vittorio pulled her close. "I never thanked you," he murmured. "For what?" "For seeing past what I was to what I could be. For believing I could change. For giving me a reason to try." His hand found hers in the darkness. "For choosing me even when it was terrifying. For giving me Dante. For making me understand that the only empire worth having is the one we build in this house, with our family every single day." Talia rolled to face him, their noses nearly touching. "You don't need to thank me," she whispered. "You gave me everything I didn't know I needed. Safety, love, a family, a future where I'm not afraid." "You're never going to be afraid again," he promised. "I'll make sure of it." "I know." And she did. Because Vittorio Moretti, dangerous, powerful, once ruthless crime lord, had proven that when he loved something, nothing in heaven or earth could threaten it. He'd burned his empire to ash to keep her safe. He'd walked away from power to give their son a better life. He'd chosen love over everything. And every single day he chose it again. "I love you," she said. "I love you more," he replied. "Not possible. We'll debate it tomorrow." She smiled in the darkness. "Tomorrow. And the day after that. And every day for the rest of their lives." Epilogue. 2 years later. Talia pushed the stroller through the park, 18-month-old Dante chattering away in Italian and English, pointing at dogs and birds and everything that caught his attention. Vittorio walked beside them hand in hand with his wife, looking more relaxed than he had in years. "Papa Cane," Dante shouted, pointing at a golden retriever. See, that's a dog, Vittorio confirmed, crouching down to Dante's level. Big dog. Big. Dante agreed enthusiastically. Talia smiled, watching them interact, and felt that same swell of love and gratitude she experienced a dozen times a day. They'd built this. This life. This family. This future. Not despite the darkness they'd come from, but because they'd chosen to walk toward the light together. A familiar voice called out, "Talia?" She turned. And froze. Marcus stood 10 feet away, looking older and somehow smaller than she remembered. Vittorio stood immediately, positioning himself slightly in front of both Talia and Dante, his entire body language shifting to something protective and dangerous. "Walk away," Vittorio said quietly. "Now. I wanted to apologize," Marcus said quickly, hands raised. "For everything. The things I said. I was cruel and you didn't deserve it." Talia studied him. Saw the sincerity in his eyes. The regret. "Apology accepted," she said simply. "Now please leave." "Of course. He looked at Dante, at Vittorio, at the life she'd built. "I'm glad you're happy." "I am," she confirmed. "Very." Marcus nodded and left. Vittorio turned to her immediately. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." And she was. Because Marcus's opinion, his presence, his very existence no longer had the power to hurt her. "He's just someone I used to know. He doesn't matter." Vittorio's expression softened. He pulled her close, careful not to jostle the stroller, and kissed her forehead. "Nothing matters except this," he murmured. "Our family." "I know," she said. "I've always known." They continued their walk, Dante's happy babbling filling the air, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. And Talia realized that this ordinary, beautiful, perfectly imperfect moment, was everything she'd ever wanted. Not the penthouse or the money or the security, but this. A man who loved her unconditionally. A son who was healthy and happy. A future that was theirs to shape. Marcus's cruel words in that cafe felt like a lifetime ago. Because they were. He was different now. Stronger. Braver. And nothing, not the past, not judgment, not fear, could touch that. "What are you thinking about?" Vittorio asked, watching her smile. "That I forgive him," she said simply. "Marcus. Your father. Everyone who tried to keep us apart or hurt us or make us doubt this was possible. That's generous of you." "It's freeing," she corrected. "I don't want to carry that anymore. I just want this. Our family." Vittorio stopped walking, turned her to face him, and kissed her with such tenderness it made her eyes burn. "Ti amo bellezza mia," he whispered against her lips. "For the rest of my life and whatever comes after." "I love you too," she breathed. "Always." Dante chose that moment to demand attention, reaching for his parents with grabby hands and an impatient, "Mama. Papa." They laughed and returned to him, scooping him out of the stroller for kisses and cuddles. And as they walked home together, the three of them, plus the child she'd just learned she was carrying, though Vittorio didn't know yet, Talia felt nothing but peace. This was her empire. Love. Family. Home. And it was worth more than all the power in the world. And love doesn't always arrive in the way we expect. Sometimes it's complicated, messy, and born from the most unlikely circumstances. But when it's real, when two people choose each other despite the obstacles, it becomes something unbreakable. May you find someone who loves you with that same unwavering devotion, who sees you completely and chooses you anyway. Thank you for reading this journey with us. Please like, share, and subscribe.